My parents left me in foster care at 8 to travel with my brother. Now they're jobless, desperate, and reaching out. So I gave them what they deserved. My own parents sat me down when I was 8 years old and told me they couldn't afford to keep me anymore. 2 weeks later, they were on a beach in Bali with my brother Tyler, posting photos with the caption, "Finally living our dream life." I didn't understand it then, but they hadn't abandoned me because they couldn't afford me. They abandoned me because I was in the way of the life they actually wanted. 15 years later, they showed up at my apartment door, jobless, homeless, and desperate for help. The look on their faces when I told them exactly what I thought of them, that was worth waiting 15 years for. My name is Noah, and I'm 23 now, but this story starts when I was just 8 years old. Before my parents abandoned me, I thought we were just a normal family. We weren't rich by any means, but we had a comfortable house in a decent neighborhood. Dad worked at an accounting firm, Mom ran a small online boutique, and my brother Tyler and I shared a bedroom with superhero posters on the walls. Tyler was 3 years older than me, and in my parents' eyes, he was perfect. Everything he did was amazing. His grades, his soccer trophies, the way he could play the guitar. When Tyler performed at his school talent show, my parents recorded every second, cheering so loudly they embarrassed him. When I had my own talent show a month later, they showed up late and left early. "We have to go," Mom whispered to Dad halfway through my piano piece. "Tyler has soccer practice." I pretended not to notice. It wasn't that they were cruel to me. They remembered my birthdays, took me to doctor appointments, and sometimes Dad would ruffle my hair and call me sport. But there was always this distance, like I was a houseplant they remembered to water just often enough to keep alive. There were signs, looking back. The way Mom would sigh whenever I needed new clothes, how Dad would check his watch when it was my turn to talk at dinner. The whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. "He's just so ordinary," I overheard Mom say once. I was 7, standing outside their bedroom door, a drawing I'd made clutched in my hand. I'd spent hours on it, hoping Mom would put it on the fridge like she did with Tyler's art. "Melissa, he's just a kid," Dad replied, but there was no real defense in his voice, just resignation. I walked back to my room and tore the drawing to pieces. Tyler wasn't mean to me. He was just absent, already pulled into Mom and Dad's orbit, basking in their attention. Sometimes, though, he'd feel bad and try to include me. "Come on, squirt," he'd say, letting me play video games with him or showing me how to throw a proper spiral. Those moments made me feel like I belonged, even if they never lasted long. The summer I turned 8, my parents started talking about travel. A lot. They'd pull out maps at dinner, circle destinations in travel magazines, and spend hours looking at Airbnbs on their laptops. "Wouldn't it be amazing to just go?" Mom would say, her eyes bright with excitement. "No mortgage, no schedules, just freedom." "When would we go?" I asked once. "What about school?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't read. "We'd figure something out," Dad said vaguely. They started selling things. The exercise equipment in the basement, Mom's collection of vintage handbags, the second car. They said it was to simplify. But even at 8, I knew something bigger was happening. One night, I heard them arguing. I crept to their door, a habit I'd developed to piece together the parts of our family they didn't show me. "We can't afford it with both of them," Dad was saying. "The numbers just don't work." "I know," Mom replied, her voice tight. "But Tyler's at a crucial age. His development, his talents, we can't disrupt that." "So what are you suggesting?" Dad asked, though from his tone it seemed like he already knew. There was a long pause before Mom answered. "There are options for Noah." My stomach dropped. They were talking about me. 2 days later, they asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. Tyler was at a friend's house. It was just the 3 of us, and somehow I already knew what was coming. Not the details, but the feeling, like standing on a cliff edge, knowing someone was about to push you off. "Noah," Mom began, her voice syrupy sweet in a way that immediately put me on edge. "You know how much we love you, right?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "And you know we've been talking about traveling, seeing the world?" Dad continued, not quite meeting my eyes. Another nod. "Well, your mom and I have made a decision. We're going to do it. Travel the world, live our dream, but..." He trailed off, looking to Mom. But we've run into a little problem, she picked up smoothly. Financially, it's just not possible for all four of us right now, and it wouldn't be fair to Tyler to disrupt his special programs and coaching. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear what they were saying next, but the message was clear enough. They were leaving, taking Tyler, and I wasn't part of the plan. It's just temporary, Dad assured me, patting my hand. We found a really nice foster family for you. The Bakers, they have a pool. As if a pool could replace your parents. Once we get established, once the blog and sponsorships take off, we'll send for you, Mom added. A year, maybe 2 at most. I sat there, shock numbing me from the inside out. My voice, when I finally found it, was small. What about Tyler? Mom's face softened. Tyler needs to continue his training. The coaches in Europe, the opportunities. This could be his future. You understand, don't you, sweetie? I didn't. But I nodded anyway, because what else could I do? That night, after they thought I was asleep, I heard Tyler come home. They told him the plan, their voices excited. I waited for him to object, to say, "What about Noah?" But all I heard was his enthusiasm matching theirs. "This is going to be epic," he said, and my last hope shattered. 2 weeks later, I stood in the driveway of a stranger's house, holding a small suitcase with everything my parents decided I could keep. Mom hugged me, her perfume choking me. Dad shook my hand like I was a business associate. "Be good for the Bakers," Mom said. "We'll call every week," Dad promised. Tyler gave me an awkward side hug. "I'll bring you back something cool," he said, already halfway back to the car. And then they were gone, dust from the driveway still settling as their car disappeared around the corner. They didn't call the next week, or the week after, or ever. The silence from my parents was deafening. The Bakers tried to make me feel welcome, but I was just going through the motions. For the first month, I checked the mail every day, hoping for a postcard. I answered every phone call, thinking it might be them. I even begged Mrs. Baker to help me set up an email account so they could reach me that way. Nothing. "Maybe they're somewhere without good service," Mrs. Baker suggested, her voice gentle. But we both knew that wasn't it. 3 months after they left, I found them online. It wasn't hard. My mother had named their travel blog, The Nomadic Andersons, Living Free. My hands trembled as I clicked through the homepage. There they were, smiling on beaches, posing in front of temples, eating exotic foods at quaint cafes. And in every other photo, there was Tyler, sun-kissed and grinning, looking like he was having the time of his life. I scrolled through post after post, my chest getting tighter with each image. There was no mention of me. Not once, not even a "wish you were here" or "missing our youngest." It was like I had never existed. Then I found a post titled, "How We Made Our Dream a Reality." I clicked on it, my mouth dry. "Many people ask us how we afford this lifestyle," Mom had written. "The truth is, it meant sacrificing the things that were holding us back. The big house, the extra car, the unnecessary expenses. We downsized dramatically and prioritized experiences over possessions." Unnecessary expenses. Was that what I was? I kept reading, feeling sicker with every word. It takes courage to break free from society's expectations, to choose freedom over routine, to prioritize what truly matters. Apparently, I wasn't what truly mattered. The final blow came when I scrolled to the comments. Someone had asked if they homeschooled their son while traveling. Mom's reply made my hands shake. Tyler thrives with a combination of online classes and real-world education. We meet up with other traveling families, and the kids learn so much from experiencing different cultures. It's the best decision we ever made for him. The best decision. Not once did she mention having another son. Not once did she acknowledge that this best decision had meant abandoning me. I ran to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. When I came back, I found the most recent post. It was from just 2 days ago. A sunset picture in Thailand. Dad with his arm around Mom, Tyler standing beside them, all three toasting with colorful drinks. The caption read, "Living our authentic lives. No regrets." That night was the first time I cried myself to sleep at the Bakers. I'd been holding it together, telling myself it was temporary, that they'd come back for me once they got settled. But seeing that blog shattered the lie I'd been telling myself. 6 months after they'd left me, I got a package in the mail. My heart leapt when I saw it was from my parents. Inside was a small wooden elephant carving and a postcard with a generic "Greetings from Thailand" on the front. On the back, Mom had written, "Noah, hope you're doing well with the bakers. Tyler picked this out for you. We're having an amazing time. The blog is really taking off, and some sponsors are interested. Keep working hard at school, Mom and Dad." That was it. 6 months, and all I got was a tourist trinket and 4 sentences. "No, we miss you. No, we're planning to bring you here soon. Not even an 'I love you.'" I put the elephant on my dresser and stared at it for hours. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Baker found me sitting on the floor of my room, surrounded by broken pieces of wood. I'd smashed the elephant with my baseball bat. "Oh, Noah," she said, sitting down beside me. "I'm so sorry." "They're not coming back for me, are they?" I whispered. Mrs. Baker pulled me into a hug. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're here for you, for as long as you need." A year passed, then another. The Bakers legally became my foster parents. I stopped checking the mail. I stopped looking at the blog. I tried to build a new life, one that didn't include waiting for people who clearly weren't waiting for me. Until my 11th birthday, when the Bakers told me someone was on the phone for me. My heart raced as I took the receiver. "Hello? Noah? It's Dad." His voice sounded different, tired, but it was him. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Noah? Are you there?" "I'm here," I managed. Happy birthday, buddy." He sounded awkward, like he was talking to a stranger. I guess that's what I'd become. Mom wanted to call too, but she's at a meeting with a potential sponsor. Of course she was. "How are you?" he asked, filling the silence. What was I supposed to say? That I'd cried myself to sleep for months? That I'd been in therapy? That I'd had to explain to every new teacher, every potential friend, why my parents weren't around? "Fine," I said instead. Good. "Listen, Noah." He paused. "We've been meaning to call more, but things have been crazy. The blog's really taking off. Tyler's even got a small sponsorship from a sports brand." "That's great," I said, my voice flat. "Yeah, it is. We're really making this work." Another pause. "The thing is, Noah, we've been talking about the future, and we think, well, the Bakers seem like good people, and you're settled there now, in school, with friends." My grip on the phone tightened. "What are you saying?" Dad sighed. "We think it's best if you stay with the Bakers. Permanently." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "You said it was temporary," I whispered. "You said you'd come back for me." "Plans change, Noah. We've built a life here. Tyler's thriving, and bringing you over now, it would be too disruptive. For everyone. For everyone, not for me. For them. I see." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow yet somehow too calm. "The Bakers mentioned they'd consider adopting you. We think that would be best. Give you stability." Stability. The very thing they'd said Tyler needed when they took him but left me behind. "Noah, do you understand what I'm saying?" "Yes." My voice was ice now. "You're saying you don't want me anymore. That you never did. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is abandoning your 8-year-old son and then calling on his birthday 3 years later to tell him you're never coming back." My voice had risen to a shout. Mrs. Baker appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Noah, calm down. We're trying to do what's best." "For who?" "Not for me. Never for me." Hot tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. "You left me like I was nothing. You erased me from your perfect little travel family. You didn't call, you didn't write, and now you're calling to officially throw me away? That's enough." Dad's voice had hardened. "This attitude is exactly why this arrangement is for the best. You were always so difficult, so needy. Tyler adapted, you never could." The words hit me like physical blows, stealing my breath. "I was 8 years old," I whispered. "I was your son. And now you'll be the Baker's son," he replied coldly. "Trust me, it's better this way." "Better for you, you mean?" There was a long silence. Then, "Goodbye, Noah. Take care of yourself." The line went dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Mrs. Baker gently took it from me and hung it up, then pulled me into a hug. "They're never coming back," I said into her shoulder. "No, sweetie, I don't think they are." Her voice was sad but honest. That was the moment I knew for certain. My parents hadn't temporarily left me behind. They had deliberately thrown me away. And no amount of wishing or waiting would ever bring them back. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would stop waiting, stop hoping, stop being the abandoned child. Instead, I would become someone they would regret losing, someone who didn't need them, who never had. After that birthday phone call, something inside me changed. The part of me that had been desperately holding on to hope shriveled and died. In its place grew something harder, more determined. Mrs. Baker found me the next morning, systematically removing every photo of my parents and Tyler from my room. I was tearing each one in half before dropping the pieces into a trash bag. "Noah, are you okay?" she asked, hovering in the doorway. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in months. "Just doing some cleaning." She sat on the edge of my bed, watching me work. "What your father said wasn't right." "I know." I kept my eyes on my task, afraid that if I looked at her, I might break. "We would never try to replace your parents, Noah. You know that, right?" I paused, finally meeting her gaze. "You've been more parents to me in 3 years than they ever were." Mrs. Baker's eyes welled up with tears. "Oh, honey? They mentioned adoption," I said quietly. Is that something you and Mr. Baker want?" Her face softened. "We've talked about it. We love having you here, Noah. You're already part of our family, but we didn't want to push you before you were ready." For the first time since the phone call, I felt a tiny flicker of something like hope. Not for my parents' return, but for something new. I think I'd like that. The adoption process took almost a year. During that time, I threw myself into school and sports, anything to keep my mind busy. I stopped looking at my parents' blog. I stopped waiting for them to change their minds. The Bakers became mom and dad in more than just legal terms. They showed up to every school event, helped with every project, and never made me feel like I was a burden. When I was 13, I found a shoebox full of letters in the garage. They were addressed to me in Mrs. Baker's, Mom's handwriting, but they'd never been sent. Curious, I opened one. "Dear Noah," it read, "today you asked if your parents had called, and I had to tell you no. I saw the light dim in your eyes, and it broke my heart. I wish I could make them see what they're missing, this brilliant, kind boy who deserves so much more than their neglect." The letter went on, full of observations about me, things I'd said or done that had made her proud. Things most parents would notice about their children. I read another letter and another until I was surrounded by pages of undelivered words. Mom found me there, silently crying. "Oh, Noah, I'm sorry. I should have put those away." "Why didn't you send them?" I asked, wiping my eyes. She sat down beside me. "I wrote them when I was angry at your parents. I didn't want to make things harder for you by sending my anger into what was already a painful situation." I nodded, understanding. "You saw me. All this time, you really saw me." She gathered me into a hug. "Of course I did. How could anyone not?" Life went on. By high school, I was Noah Baker. I had friends who had never known me as the abandoned kid. I had parents who cheered at my games and framed my report cards. I was starting to build an identity that wasn't defined by what I'd lost, but by what I'd found. Then, during my junior year, Tyler texted me. I was sitting in English class when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey Noah, it's Tyler. Got your number from the Bakers. Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. 6 years of silence, and now he wanted to talk. I shoved my phone back in my pocket and tried to focus on the lecture, but my mind was spinning. After school, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring at that text. Finally, I replied, "Why now?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "I'm back in the US. In college now. Parents don't know I'm contacting you." Another message followed quickly. "I'm sorry, Noah, for everything." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to inflict the same pain of silence he and my parents had caused me. But another part was curious. "Where are you?" I texted back. "State University. About an hour from you." That weekend, I told Mom and Dad I was meeting a friend for coffee. I wasn't ready to tell them about Tyler yet. Wasn't sure if I'd even want to after seeing him. The campus coffee shop was crowded with students. I spotted Tyler immediately. He looked like our father. Tall, with the same dark hair and sharp jawline, but thinner, more tired than the golden boy in the travel photos. He stood when he saw me, an uncertain smile on his face. "Noah, you came." I didn't smile back. "I'm here." We sat across from each other, an awkward silence stretching between us. He kept fiddling with his coffee cup, not meeting my eyes. "You look good," he finally said. "What do you want, Tyler?" I wasn't in the mood for small talk. He sighed. I wanted to see you, to apologize. For what part? Leaving without a fight? Never calling? Acting like I didn't exist for 6 years? All of it. His voice was low. I was a kid too, Noah. I was 11. I didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. You were old enough to know they were leaving me behind. Yeah, but I didn't think it would be permanent. They told me it was temporary, that once they got the blog going and made some money, we'd send for you. I laughed bitterly. Funny. That's what they told me too. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. Look, I'm not defending them. What they did was wrong. I want you to know it wasn't a vacation for me either. What are you talking about? I saw the blog. The beaches, the temples, living your best life while I was left behind. That was all for show, Tyler said, his voice hardening. Mom and Dad were obsessed with appearances, with looking like the perfect nomadic family, but it was all fake. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Looked pretty real to me. You try living in hostels and cheap apartments, moving every few weeks, being dragged to tourist spots for the perfect Instagram shot. His voice was bitter now. I never had friends, never had stability, and if I complained, I was ungrateful. If I said I missed you or wanted to go home, I was ruining their dream. For the first time I looked at Tyler, really looked at him. The dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed to carry the same weight I'd been carrying. What happened to the sports sponsorship? I asked, remembering Dad's claim during our last phone call. Tyler laughed. There never was one. Dad made that up to sound successful. The blog never made money. They bounced from place to place, running from credit card debt and angry landlords. This was news to me. What do you mean, running? He glanced around, then leaned forward. They weren't just chasing a dream, Noah. They were running from something. Right before we left, I overheard them talking about investors who were looking for them. Investors? That's what they called them. But from what I gathered, Mom and Dad had taken money from people for some business scheme that never materialized. My mind flashed back to the letters I'd found, to the debt collectors contacting the bakers. This was starting to make more sense. So they weren't just selfish dreamers, they were criminals. Tyler nodded slowly. I think so. Nothing major, probably just small-time investment scams, but enough that they needed to disappear. And I was excess baggage, I said flatly. We both were. The difference is, they thought they could use me for the blog, the perfect family image. His face twisted, until I wasn't perfect anymore. What do you mean? Tyler rolled up his sleeve, revealing a long scar running from his wrist halfway up his forearm. I tried to kill myself when I was 16. That's not exactly on brand for a travel influencer's kid. I stared at the scar, shocked into silence. After that, things got worse, Tyler continued. Mom was furious, not because I was hurting, but because I'd ruined our image. They stopped including me in the blog, started leaving me behind in whatever country we were in while they went on trips. Why didn't you reach out sooner? I asked. Partly shame, partly because I believed their lies about you, that you were better off, that you were happy with your new family. He met my eyes. Are you? Happy, I mean? I thought about the bakers, about the home they'd built for me. Yes, I said honestly, I am. Tyler nodded, a sad smile on his face. Good, that's good. What about you? Are you still traveling with them? No, I finally broke free last year. Applied to colleges in secret, got a scholarship. They don't know where I am, and I want to keep it that way. I had 100 more questions, but one stood out. Why now, Tyler? Why reach out after all this time? He pulled out his phone and showed me a news article. The headline made my breath catch. Travel influencers under investigation for fraud, wire transfers. There was a photo of my parents, looking considerably older and less polished than in their blog photos. The article detailed allegations that they had solicited investments for non-existent business ventures, using their online presence to lure in victims. It's all catching up to them, Tyler said quietly. And I wanted to warn you, they've been asking about you. I think they might try to contact you. Why would they? They threw me away. Because they're desperate. They've run out of money, run out of places to hide. And they know you're here, stable, probably with a support system they can exploit. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They want to use me. Tyler nodded grimly. Just like they used me. Just like they've used everyone. I sat back, processing this information. All these years, I'd thought they abandoned me because I wasn't good enough, not special like Tyler, not worth taking along. But the truth was darker, more calculating. They'd left me behind, not because they didn't want me, but because I was a liability to their escape plan. And now they might come back, not because they missed me, but because they needed something from me. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally, "for warning me." Tyler reached across the table, hesitating before placing his hand on mine. "I should have been a better brother. I should have fought for you." For the first time since he'd texted, I felt something other than anger toward him. "You were a kid too, Tyler." They manipulated both of us. We talked for hours after that, filling in the gaps of our separate lives. As the coffee shop emptied, we exchanged phone numbers, real ones this time, and promised to stay in touch. On the drive home, my mind was reeling with everything I'd learned. My parents hadn't just abandoned me. They'd been running from their crimes. And now, they might be coming back. Not out of love, but desperation. I needed to be ready. The meeting with Tyler changed everything. I'd spent years thinking my parents had simply chosen my brother over me. But the truth was more calculated. They'd been fleeing from fraud charges, and I was a complication they couldn't afford. Now, according to Tyler, they were desperate and might try to find me. I decided to tell Mom and Dad Baker everything. They deserved to know, especially if my biological parents were planning to reappear. I met with Tyler yesterday, I confessed over dinner that night. Their forks paused midair. Dad Baker set his utensils down. "Your brother Tyler?" I nodded, then told them everything. The fraud allegations, the reality behind the glamorous travel blog, Tyler's struggles, and the warning that my biological parents might try to contact me. Mom Baker reached for my hand. "Noah, I'm so sorry. This must be a lot to process." "Actually, it helps," I said. "All these years I thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't special enough to keep. Now I know it wasn't about me at all. It was about them running from their problems." Dad Baker's expression hardened. "If they think they can waltz back into your life after all this time, they'll try," I interrupted. "Tyler says they're desperate. Apparently, they've been asking about me." "We'll get a lawyer," Mom Baker said immediately. "Make sure they can't make any legal claims." I shook my head. "I'm 18 now. Legally, they can't force anything." I paused, an idea forming. "But I don't just want to avoid them. I want to be ready when they come." Something in my tone made both of them look at me more closely. "Ready how?" Dad Baker asked cautiously. "I want to know exactly what they did, what they're running from, everything." My voice was calm, determined. "If they think they can use me after all this time, they're wrong. I need to be prepared." The next morning, I skipped my first class and went to the public library. The computers there weren't monitored like the ones at school, and I could search without raising eyebrows. For hours, I dug through news archives and court records, piecing together the trail my parents had left. I found it all. The investment scheme they'd run before leaving, promising high returns on a revolutionary travel platform that never existed. The money they'd taken from at least a dozen people, including friends and family members. The complaints filed, the civil judgments entered in their absence, the collection attempts that failed because they disappeared. One name kept appearing in the documents: James Reeves, a former business partner who seemed to have lost the most money. According to court transcripts, he'd testified that my parents had convinced him to invest his life savings, over $200,000, just weeks before they vanished. I wrote down his name and information. He might be useful. Next, I called Tyler. "I need everything you have on them," I said when he answered. "Bank accounts, email addresses, social media passwords, anything you remember." "Why? What are you planning?" He sounded concerned. "Just preparation," I assured him. "If they show up, I want to know exactly who I'm dealing with." Tyler hesitated before agreeing. "I'll email you what I have. But Noah, be careful. They're manipulative. They'll say anything to get what they want." "I know," I said grimly. "Trust me, I know." Over the next week, I built a complete picture of Robert and Melissa Anderson, my biological parents. I tracked their digital footprint across various countries, noting the pattern of arriving somewhere, setting up crowdfunding campaigns for their life-changing travel documentary, collecting money stacked, then disappearing to another location before delivering anything. I set up Google alerts for their names and the various aliases Tyler had mentioned they sometimes used. I monitored their abandoned social media accounts, which had been dormant for months. I even contacted James Reeves, presenting myself as a fraud investigator tracking their case. "Those bastards ruined me," he told me over the phone, not realizing he was speaking to their son. "If you find them, I want to know immediately." I promised I would. Meanwhile, on the surface, my life continued normally. I attended classes, played basketball, applied to colleges, but beneath it all, I was preparing, building armor around myself, gathering ammunition should I need it. The Bakers watched me with growing concern. One night, Dad Baker knocked on my bedroom door, finding me surrounded by printouts of court documents. "Noah," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I understand why you're doing this, but I'm worried about you." I looked up from my notes. "I need to be ready." "I know, but don't let them consume you." He gestured at my wall where I'd pinned maps tracking their movements. "You've spent years moving forward. Don't let them pull you back." I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. "I just need to finish this," I promised. 2 months passed with no contact from my biological parents. I'd almost started to think Tyler's warning had been premature when I received a friend request on Facebook from a Melissa Jenkins, my mother, using a variation of her maiden name. I stared at the notification, my heart pounding. Here it was, the contact Tyler had warned me about. Rather than accepting or declining, I used the information to track down her current location. Within an hour, I'd found her on Instagram under the same alias, posting from a motel on the outskirts of our town. They were here. Instead of responding to her request, I continued monitoring. Over the next few days, more attempts at contact came. A message to my school email, a voicemail on the Baker's home phone asking for me, even a letter sent to our address. "Noah, please call us. We need to talk. It's urgent, Mom and Dad." Mom and Dad, as if they had the right to those titles. I didn't respond to any of these overtures. Instead, I continued gathering information. Through social media hints and background searches, I discovered they'd lost everything. Their passports had been confiscated pending the fraud investigation. They were staying at a budget motel, paying weekly rates. According to court records, they faced potential criminal charges in 3 states. They weren't just coming back to reconnect. They were desperate, cornered, and looking for a lifeline. 1 week after the first contact attempt, I woke to find a text from Tyler. "They asked me about you again." I stalled, but they're getting pushy. Said something about family sticking together in hard times. I sat up in bed, suddenly very alert. "What exactly did they say?" "That they're reaching out to you to make amends but haven't heard back. They asked if I knew where you live now, if you're still with the Bakers." I told them I don't know anything. "Good," I replied. "Keep it that way." I spent that day finalizing my plan. I knew they would eventually find a way to confront me in person. People like them always did. And when that happened, I needed to be prepared not just to defend myself, but to end their influence over my life permanently. I set up a meeting with a lawyer Dad Baker recommended, Angela Pierce, who specialized in family law and fraud cases. I brought my entire file of evidence. "I'm impressed," she said, flipping through my meticulous documentation. "You've built quite a case here." "I need to know my options," I explained. "If they try to manipulate me or the Bakers, I want legal recourse." Angela outlined my options: restraining orders if necessary, potential cooperation with authorities investigating their fraud cases, and civil suits for abandonment if I chose to pursue that route. "But honestly," she said, closing the file, "the best defense might simply be complete non-engagement. People like this thrive on emotional reactions. Deny them that, and you take away their power." I considered her advice, but knew in my gut that simply ignoring them wouldn't be enough. They had escaped consequences for too long, running from debts, from responsibilities, from me. Part of moving forward with my life meant ensuring they couldn't disrupt it again. That evening, I received another text from an unknown number. "Noah, it's your father. We're in town and need to see you. It's important. Family matters. Please respond." I showed the message to the Bakers. "You don't have to respond," Mom Baker said, her face tight with concern. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," I said, "but I need to end this." once and for all. Dad Baker studied my face. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to face them, on my terms. I held up my phone. I'm going to respond and set up a meeting. The Bakers exchanged worried glances. I'll be careful, I promised. But this needs to happen. I can't move forward with my life if I'm always looking over my shoulder, wondering when they'll appear. After a long discussion, they reluctantly agreed, but with conditions. The meeting would happen in a public place and Dad Baker would be nearby. I texted back a response. I'll meet you, tomorrow. 1 p.m. City Park near the fountain. Just you and Mom. No one else. The reply came immediately. We'll be there. Thank you, son. Son. The word made my skin crawl. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went over my plan repeatedly, checking for flaws, preparing responses to whatever manipulation tactics they might employ. By morning, I was exhausted but resolved. Before leaving for the park, I gathered everything I needed. Copies of court documents, financial records, screenshots of their abandoned social media accounts filled with lies, and finally, a small recorder to document our conversation. Are you sure about this? Mom Baker asked as I prepared to leave. I nodded, feeling calmer than I had in months. I've spent 10 years defined by what they did to me. Today, I take that power back. Dad Baker squeezed my shoulder. We'll be right behind you, whatever happens. As I drove to the park, a strange sense of peace washed over me. For years, I'd been the abandoned child, the one they didn't want enough to keep. But today, I wasn't that scared 8-year-old anymore. I was Noah Baker. Strong, prepared, and ready to face the people who had once thrown me away. They might be coming to me for help, but they were about to learn a hard lesson. I wasn't the one who needed saving anymore. They were. The city park was crowded, exactly as I'd planned. I arrived 30 minutes early, positioning myself on a bench with clear sightlines to the fountain and all approaching paths. Dad Baker sat at a cafe across the street, pretending to read a newspaper while keeping watch. At 12:55, I spotted them. Even from a distance, I could tell 10 years had not been kind to Robert and Melissa Anderson. My father's confident stride had become a nervous shuffle. My mother's designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a faded blouse. They looked older, haggard, scanning the park with anxious eyes. I didn't wave or call out. I simply watched as they made their way to the fountain, checking their phones, clearly wondering if I would show. At exactly 1 p.m., I approached them from behind. Robert, Melissa. I used their first names deliberately. They spun around, and for a moment, neither spoke. They were taking in the stranger before them, no longer a child, but a tall, confident young man who bore little resemblance to the 8-year-old they'd abandoned. Noah, my mother breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back, maintaining distance. Let's sit, I said, gesturing to a nearby picnic table. The recorder in my pocket was already running. We sat awkwardly, them on one side, me on the other. My father cleared his throat. You look good, son, healthy. The Bakers take good care of me, I replied, my voice neutral. My mother's eyes welled with tears, always quick with the waterworks when it suited her. We've missed you so much, Noah. Not a day went by that we didn't think of you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because according to your blog, travel podcast, and Instagram, you didn't mention me once in 10 years. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. That was complicated, my father said. The blog was for business. We had to present a certain image. An image that didn't include your younger son, I stated flatly. Just be honest. You left me because I was inconvenient to your escape plan. My mother flinched. That's not true. We always planned to bring you along once we were settled. 7 months after you left, Dad called to tell me the arrangement was permanent, that I was too difficult and too needy, that it was better this way. I kept my voice level despite the old pain those words still triggered. You abandoned me and then tried to make it sound like you were doing me a favor. My father shifted uncomfortably. We were in a difficult position. Because of the fraud investigations, I interrupted. Because you scammed people out of their life savings and needed to disappear quickly. The color drained from both their faces. How did you, my father started, know about that? I finished for him. I've been doing my homework. James Reeves lost $200,000. The Wilsons lost their retirement fund. Your own sister lost $50,000 she'd saved for her daughter's college education. I took out a folder and placed it on the table between us. I have copies of all the police reports, civil judgments, and victim statements. I know exactly what you were running from. My mother reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back before she could touch me. Noah, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. We need your help. There it was, the real reason for this reunion. What kind of help? I asked, though I already knew. My father glanced around, then leaned forward. We're in trouble, son. Serious trouble. The authorities have frozen our accounts. We've got creditors after us. We're facing possible jail time. And how exactly am I supposed to help with that? We need a place to stay, my mother said, just temporarily, and maybe a loan to help us get back on our feet. I laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. A loan? Like the ones you took from all those people you defrauded? We were going to pay them back, my father insisted. Things just got complicated. Things didn't get complicated, I said coldly. You stole money, lied to everyone, and ran away when it caught up to you, including running away from your 8-year-old son. People at nearby tables were starting to glance our way. Good. I wanted witnesses. Lower your voice, my father hissed. We're trying to have a private conversation here. Why? Are you afraid someone might hear about what you did? About how you abandoned your child to escape fraud charges? About how you're now trying to manipulate that same child for money? My mother's tears were flowing freely now. Please, Noah. We're desperate. We have nowhere else to go. You had 10 years to contact me, I said. 10 years of birthdays, holidays, school events. You reached out exactly once to tell me you didn't want me anymore, and now you're back because you need something. I opened the folder and started laying out documents one by one. This is the statement from the Bakers about how often you called to check on me. Never. I placed another document down. This is a printout of your blog post about sacrificing the things holding you back to live your dream life. That would be me. Another document. This is your bank statement showing you had enough money to fly to Bali, but not enough to send your son a birthday card. My father's face flushed with anger. What is this? Are you trying to shame us? No, I'm establishing a pattern. I continued laying out papers. This is the police report filed by James Reeves. This is the civil judgment against you in the state of Oregon. This is the warrant for your arrest in Colorado. My mother was openly sobbing now, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Just a calm determination to finish what I'd started. Noah, please, she begged. We're your parents. No, I said firmly. You're not. Parents don't abandon their children. And parents don't disappear for 10 years and then show up only when they need something. My father's desperation was turning to anger. We gave you life. You owe us. I owe you nothing, I cut him off. The Bakers are my parents. They're the ones who raised me, who showed up to every game, who helped with homework, who taught me what family really means. I stood up, gathering my documents. I didn't come here to help you. I came to tell you to stay away from me, from the Bakers, from Tyler. We're not your safety net. We're not your backup plan. My father stood too, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... Sir, is there a problem here? We all turned to see a police officer standing nearby, attracted by the rising voices. No problem, I said calmly. Just a family disagreement. These people are harassing me, officer, my father said quickly, trying a different approach. This is my son, and he's... Actually, I interrupted. These people abandoned me 10 years ago. I'm Noah Baker. I pulled out my ID. I'm 18, legally adopted by the Baker family, and these individuals are currently wanted for questioning regarding multiple fraud investigations. The officer's expression changed as he looked more closely at my parents. Could I see some identification, please? He asked them. My father's face paled. We're just having a conversation with our son. This isn't necessary. Identification, sir? The officer repeated more firmly. While my father fumbled for his wallet, I turned to leave. Noah, wait, my mother called after me. Please don't do this. I paused, turning back to look at her. I'm not doing anything. You did this. All of it. I'm just refusing to be your victim anymore. As I walked away, I could hear my father's rising protests, my mother's sobs, and the officer's professional tone requesting they come to the station to answer some questions. Dad Baker met me halfway across the park, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yeah, I think I am. What happened back there? He asked, eyeing the police officer who was now on his radio, keeping a close eye on my biological parents. Accountability, I said simply. Something they've been avoiding for a long time. That night at dinner, I told the Bakers everything. How my parents had asked for money and a place to stay, how I'd confronted them with evidence of their fraud, how the encounter had ended with police involvement. The officer called me later, I explained. They're being held for questioning. Apparently, there are active warrants for them in 2 states. Mom Baker squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Noah. I'm not, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. For the first time, I feel like I've got closure. They can't hurt me anymore. Dad Baker studied me across the table. You know, most people in your position would have been tempted to lash out, to hurt them back. I shook my head. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted them to face reality, that actions have consequences, that you can't throw people away when they're inconvenient and then expect them to save you later. Later that evening, Tyler called, having heard about the arrest from a mutual acquaintance. You actually did it, he said, sounding shocked. You got them arrested. I just told the truth, I replied. The consequences are their own doing. There was a long pause before Tyler spoke again. I've spent years being angry, feeling betrayed, but I never had the courage to actually stand up to them like you did. It wasn't about courage, I said. It was about finally understanding my worth. They taught me I wasn't worth keeping. The Bakers taught me that wasn't true. 2 days later, the local news ran a small story about the arrest of travel influencers, Robert and Melissa Anderson, wanted in connection with multiple fraud cases across several states. The article mentioned their nomadic lifestyle and how they had evaded authorities for years before being apprehended in a local park. What it didn't mention was their abandoned son, the one they discarded and then returned to for salvation, the one who had finally stood his ground and refused to be used again. That part of the story was mine alone, and for the first time since I was 8 years old, standing in a stranger's driveway watching my parents drive away, I felt completely free of their shadow. Tyler and I met for coffee the following weekend. He looked different, less haunted, more present. They're being extradited to Colorado, he said. The prosecutor thinks they'll serve at least 5 years. I nodded, surprisingly unmoved by this information. And how do you feel about that? Tyler considered the question. Relieved, mostly, like a chapter is finally closing. He looked at me. How about you? I thought about the Bakers, about the family I'd found, about the future stretching ahead of me. I feel like I can finally stop being the kid they abandoned and just be me. As we sat there talking about college plans and normal brother things, I realized something important. The revenge wasn't confronting them or seeing them arrested. The real revenge was living well, building a life so full and rich that their absence became irrelevant. They had thrown me away thinking I was disposable. But I had proved them wrong in the most powerful way possible, by becoming someone who didn't need them anymore. Someone who had found family not in blood, but in love. 5 years passed. I graduated from college with a degree in finance and a minor in social work, an unusual combination that raised eyebrows but made perfect sense to me. I understood both money and abandonment better than most. The trial of Robert and Melissa Anderson had come and gone. They pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for returning what little money they hadn't spent. They received 4 years in federal prison, though my mother was released after 3 for good behavior. I didn't attend the trial. I'd said everything I needed to say in that park. Tyler and I maintained our relationship, meeting for holidays and occasional weekends. He'd struggled more than I had with the aftermath of our parents' arrest. Guilt, mainly, for being the one they'd taken, for not standing up for me sooner. But therapy helped, as did our growing bond. We weren't just survivors of the same trauma anymore. We were brothers rebuilding what our parents had broken. You sure about this? Tyler asked as we pulled up to the small apartment complex on the outskirts of town. It was my mother's first place after prison, a halfway house for released inmates transitioning back to society. I'm sure, I said, though my stomach tightened. This wasn't a reconciliation visit. It was closure. We found her apartment easily, a sparse one-bedroom with minimal furniture. When she opened the door, her face registered shock, then hope, then wariness. Prison had aged her another decade. The confident woman who once believed she could abandon responsibilities and chase dreams around the world looked diminished, uncertain. "Noah, Tyler," her voice wavered. "I didn't expect." "Can we come in?" I asked, my tone neutral. She stepped aside, visibly nervous. The apartment was clean, but depressing. Beige walls, generic furniture, a small TV in the corner, a far cry from the exotic locations she once showcased on her travel blog. "Would you like something to drink? I have tea." Or, "We're fine," Tyler interrupted, clearly uncomfortable. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. My mother perched on the edge of her chair like she might need to flee at any moment. "How are you both doing?" she finally asked, her eyes darting between us. "You look good. Healthy." "We are good," I replied. "I graduated last month. Tyler's working at that software company he told you about." She nodded, a small, sad smile on her face. "I got your graduation announcement. Thank you for sending it." I hadn't sent it. Mom Baker had, believing everyone deserved a chance at redemption. I didn't correct her. "I wanted to come," she continued, "but I didn't think I'd be welcome." "You wouldn't have been," I confirmed. "No point in lying." She flinched but nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended. "Noah," Tyler warned softly, but my mother held up her hand. "No, it's okay. He has every right." She looked me in the eye for the first time. "I don't understand completely. I can't. But I understand enough to know I failed you, failed both of you." It was more acknowledgement than I'd expected, but there was still something rehearsed about it, something that felt like she was playing the role of repentant mother rather than truly feeling it. "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for 15 years. "And I don't want to hear about financial struggles or how you couldn't afford me. I want the real reason." She looked down at her hands, now lined and showing age spots. "The truth?" she sighed. "We were selfish. Completely, utterly selfish. We convinced ourselves we deserved a different life, an exciting life without responsibilities. And once we started believing that lie, everything else became—" She struggled for the word. "Expendable," I offered, "including me." "Yes." The admission seemed to deflate her further. "We told ourselves you'd be better off with a stable family, that we were doing you a favor, but that was just another lie to make ourselves feel better about what we were doing." Her honesty was unexpected. I'd prepared for excuses, for manipulation, not for raw truth. "Where's Dad?" Tyler asked, changing the subject. "Indiana, living with his brother." She twisted the plain band on her finger, not her old wedding ring, something cheaper. "We're still technically married, but that's over. Has been for years." I felt nothing at this news. These people were strangers to me now, their relationship status as irrelevant as distant acquaintances. "Why did you reach out to me that day in the park?" I asked. "Was it really just for money and a place to stay?" She had the decency to look ashamed. "Yes, mostly. But also," she hesitated, "I think part of me hoped for forgiveness, for a miraculous reunion where the past wouldn't matter." "The past always matters," I said quietly. "I know that now." She looked around her sparse apartment. "I have a lot of time to think these days." We didn't stay long. There wasn't much else to say. As we prepared to leave, she disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a small wooden box. "I kept these," she said, handing it to me. "They're yours if you want them. If not, I understand." Inside were childhood mementos: my first lost tooth, a lock of baby hair, a crayon drawing I'd made in kindergarten. Small treasures that most parents keep naturally, but that she had calculated to remove from our home, even as she was planning to leave me behind. "Why?" I asked, confused by this unexpected sentimentality from someone who had shown none when it mattered. "Because even monsters have regrets, Noah." Her voice cracked. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. But you were always in my heart, even when I didn't deserve to have you there." I closed the box and handed it back to her. "Keep it. I don't need reminders of who I was. I'm focused on who I am now." Something like understanding passed between us. I wasn't rejecting her mementos out of spite, but because I'd built my identity on stronger foundations than these fragments of a broken past. "You've become an extraordinary man," she said softly. "No thanks to me." "No," I agreed. "No thanks to you." We left her standing in the doorway of her shabby apartment, a faded version of the vibrant, selfish woman who had once thought the world owed her adventure at any cost. In the car, Tyler exhaled heavily. That was intense. Did you get what you needed? I asked. He thought for a moment. I think so. She's just so small now. It's hard to believe I spent years being terrified of disappointing her. I understood what he meant. The mythic figures of our traumatic childhood had been reduced to ordinary, flawed humans. There was power in that demystification. What about you? Tyler asked. Did you get closure? I got it years ago in the park, I replied. Today was just confirmation that I made the right choice moving forward without them. That evening, I had dinner with the Bakers, Mom, Dad, and my younger sister Lily, who they'd adopted 3 years after me. At 12, she was bright, curious, and completely secure in her place in our family, everything I hadn't been at her age. So how was it? Dad Baker asked when Lily had gone upstairs to finish homework. They knew where I'd been. Sad, I admitted, but necessary. Mom Baker squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you for going. That took courage. Not courage, I corrected. Perspective. I needed to see her as she is now, not as the monster in my memories. And, Dad prompted, and she's just a person who made terrible choices and has to live with them. I shrugged. Her punishment isn't prison. It's having to face what she threw away. Later that night, I stood in my old bedroom at the Baker's house, looking at the walls covered with my achievements, honor roll certificates, sports trophies, college degree, evidence of a life well lived despite abandonment. I thought about the wooden box of mementos my mother had kept. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd preserved physical reminders of my childhood while discarding the actual child. Those objects held no power over me now. My identity wasn't rooted in being the abandoned son anymore. I had built something stronger, something true. The next morning, I met with the director of a local youth center where I volunteered, mentoring teens in foster care. Many had stories similar to mine. Parents who couldn't or wouldn't care for them, adults who had failed them. I saw my younger self in their wary eyes, in their reluctance to trust. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making any difference, I confessed to the director after a particularly difficult session with a boy who reminded me of myself at 15, angry, closed off, convinced he wasn't worth loving. You are, she assured me. You know how I know? Because you're the proof they need, the living evidence that their past doesn't determine their future. Her words stayed with me. I had become proof of possibility. That weekend, Tyler came over to help me move into my new apartment. As we carried boxes up the stairs, he paused, setting down a heavy container. You know what I realized yesterday? At Mom's place? I leaned against the wall, catching my breath. What's that? We won. His face broke into a rare smile. They thought they could discard you and use me. But look at us now. We survived. We're thriving. We even found our way back to being brothers. I hadn't thought about it as winning or losing, but Tyler was right. In their own way, our parents had bet against both of us, against my worth, against Tyler's strength. They had lost that bet spectacularly. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom Baker, checking if we needed dinner after moving. Such a small thing, a parent looking out for their child, but the kind of small thing that had been absent in our first family. We did win, I agreed, showing him the text, because we found real family. I thought about the journey from that 8-year-old standing in a stranger's driveway to the man I was now. The path hadn't been easy, but it had led somewhere good. Somewhere I was proud to be. My parents had left me in foster care to chase a dream that turned out to be a mirage. They'd come back desperate and jobless, hoping to use me as their safety net. But in between those bookends, I'd built a life they couldn't touch or tarnish. That night, surrounded by moving boxes in my new apartment, I finally deleted the Google alerts I'd set up years ago to track my biological parents. I no longer needed to monitor their movements or prepare for their next appearance in my life. Their story was no longer intertwined with mine. I was Noah Baker, son, brother, mentor, friend. A man defined not by abandonment but by connection. Not by loss, but by what I'd found and built. The abandoned child had not only survived, he had become someone worth keeping. 3 months after visiting my mother in her halfway house, I received a certified letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. My first thought was that my parents were trying another angle to get money from me, but the contents proved far more surprising. "Dear Mr. Baker," it read, "we represent the estate of James Reeves, who passed away last month. In his will, Mr. Reeves specifically named you as a beneficiary. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details." James Reeves, the name was familiar. It took me a moment to place it. The investor who had lost $200,000 to my parents' scheme, the one who had testified against them in court. I called the number listed, confusion clouding my thoughts. The lawyer who answered explained that Mr. Reeves had left me a substantial portion of his estate, along with a letter. "But I only spoke to him once," I said, baffled. "Years ago, when I was researching my parents' fraud cases." "Perhaps the letter will explain," the lawyer suggested. "Would you like me to read it to you?" "Please," I said, sitting down as a strange feeling settled over me. "Mr. Baker," the lawyer began, "or rather, Noah. My name is James Reeves, though you know that already from our brief conversation years ago. What you don't know is that I was once married to your maternal grandmother, Elizabeth. I was your step-grandfather for the first 4 years of your life." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" The lawyer continued reading. "After your grandmother passed away, your mother and I had a falling out. She believed she deserved a larger portion of Elizabeth's estate than the will provided. When I refused to give her more than her mother had intended, she cut contact, denying me access to you and your brother." My mind raced, trying to recall any memory of this man, but found nothing. I had been too young. Years later, she approached me with her travel business scheme. I wasn't convinced, but she used my lingering affection for my grandchildren as leverage, promising I could be part of your lives again if I invested. It was emotional manipulation, but effective. I wanted to believe her. The letter detailed how my mother had taken his money, then disappeared with the family. How he'd spent years tracking them down, not just for the money, but because he was concerned about Tyler and me. When you contacted me during your investigation, I didn't tell you who I was. I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become first, without the complication of our connection. I followed your journey from afar. Your confrontation with your parents, your college graduation, your work mentoring foster children. I saw a young man who had overcome abandonment to build something meaningful. Tears filled my eyes as I listened to the words of a man who had watched over me from a distance I never knew existed. I have no children of my own, and while our time together was brief, I never stopped considering you and Tyler as family. The money your mother took from me pales in comparison to what was taken from you. Consider this inheritance not charity, but the restoration of what should have been yours all along, the support of family." The lawyer paused before continuing. "The estate includes a trust fund for both you and your brother, a property in Colorado, and Mr. Reeves's collection of first edition books, which he noted you admired during your childhood visits. I had no memory of those visits or the books, but something about it felt deeply right, like recovering a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing." "There's one more thing," the lawyer added. "Mr. Reeves left a sealed box with specific instructions that only you could open it." 2 days later, I sat in the lawyer's office with Tyler, still processing the revelation. The box sat between us on the polished desk. "Did you have any idea?" I asked Tyler. "Any memory of him at all?" Tyler shook his head. "Vaguely, maybe. I remember a man who used to read to us. Mom called him Grandpa Jim, but I was so young." The lawyer excused himself, giving us privacy. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Tyler and me as toddlers, sitting on the lap of a kind-faced man with salt and pepper hair. Holiday gatherings, birthday parties. Ordinary moments of a family life I couldn't remember. "That's us," Tyler whispered, picking up a photo of the two of us in matching pajamas, sitting beside James as he read from a large book. This was real. Beneath the photos lay several journals, each labeled with a year. I opened the earliest one and found detailed accounts of our childhood milestones, written in careful handwriting. Noah said his first sentence today, read an entry from when I would have been about 2. "Elizabeth and I couldn't be prouder. Book please," he said. Already a little scholar. Tears streamed down my face as I flipped through the journals. This man, this step-grandfather I couldn't remember, had chronicled the beginnings of my life with more care and attention than my own parents ever had. The final item in the box was a letter, addressed to both Tyler and me. It was dated just weeks before James passed away. "My boys," it began, "by now you know who I was to you, though you may not remember me. What you should know is that I never stopped looking for you. When your mother took you away, she didn't just steal my investment, she stole my family." The letter explained how he had hired private investigators over the years, trying to locate us. How he had finally found us after our parents' arrest made headlines. How he had watched our lives unfold from a distance, not wanting to intrude on the new families we had built. "I debated reaching out directly many times," he wrote, "but I questioned whether inserting myself into your lives would help or harm. You had both suffered enough disruption. Instead, I decided to wait, to watch, and to prepare this legacy for you." At the bottom of the letter was a PS that made my breath catch. "Noah, the Bakers are extraordinary people. The day I confirmed they had adopted you was one of the happiest of my life. I've made anonymous donations to their fostering organization for years. They gave you what your parents couldn't, a real home. They are your true family. But perhaps in some small way, I can be part of your extended family too, even if only in memory." Tyler and I sat in stunned silence, absorbing this revelation. All these years, we thought we had been completely abandoned, cast adrift. But someone had been searching for us, watching over us, caring about our welfare. The narrative of our childhood suddenly had a new chapter, one of connection rather than just loss. "What do we do with this?" Tyler asked finally, gesturing at the box of memories. "We reclaim it," I said. "This part of our history belongs to us now." In the following weeks, the practicalities of the inheritance unfolded. The trust funds were substantial, enough to pay off our student loans and provide financial security. The Colorado property was a beautiful mountain cabin where, according to the journals, we had spent several summer vacations as very young children. I decided to use part of my inheritance to establish a foundation for aging out foster youth, providing housing, education, and mentorship during their transition to independence. I named it the Reeves-Baker Foundation, honoring both the family that chose me and the man who never forgot me. 6 months later, Tyler and I visited the Colorado cabin for the first time in our adult lives. Standing on the deck overlooking the mountains, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu, like my body remembered what my mind could not. "Do you think Mom and Dad know about the inheritance?" Tyler asked as we watched the sunset. "Probably," I said. "Small towns have big gossip networks. Does it bother you what they might think or try?" I considered the question. "No, they have no claim to it, legally or morally, and honestly, I don't think about them much anymore." It was true. My biological parents had become secondary characters in my life story, no longer driving the plot. The protagonists were the people who had chosen to love me, the Bakers, Tyler, and now, posthumously, James Reeves. That night, I called Mom and Dad Baker to tell them about the cabin, about the strange peace I felt discovering this hidden branch of my family tree. "He watched over you when he couldn't be with you," Mom Baker said. "That's what family does." "Did you ever know about the donations he made to your organization?" I asked. "We had an anonymous donor for years," she confirmed. "We never knew who. I wish we could thank him now." "I think we can," I said, "by continuing what both of you started, giving kids like me a chance at family." The next morning, I stood on the cabin porch with my coffee, watching the sun illuminate the mountains. I thought about the 8-year-old boy standing in a stranger's driveway, watching his parents drive away. How lost he had felt, how abandoned. I wished I could tell that boy what I knew now, that family isn't just blood, that people would choose him, fight for him, remember him, that a step-grandfather he barely recalled would search for him for years, that foster parents would become real parents who would never leave, that abandonment wasn't the end of his story, but the beginning of a different, better one. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad Baker. "Just checking in. Everything good up there?" Such a simple question, such a profound answer. "Everything's good," I typed back, "better than I ever imagined." And in that moment, standing in a place that was both strange and familiar, surrounded by mountains and memories I was just beginning to reclaim, I realized the most surprising twist of all. The family my parents left me to chase, I had found a better one. One that would never leave me behind. If this story touched you in any way, tell us where you're watching from and drop it in the comments for Noah. And if you believe that family is who shows up for you, not who abandons you, hit that like button. We post real raw stories just like this every week. Tap subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment that might just change the way you see life. Thank you for watching, and if you're someone who's ever been left behind, just know you're not alone anymore.